Alexander Reed stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, gazing out at the Seattle skyline. At 35, he had accomplished what most people could only dream of. Horizon Technologies, the company he had built from his college dorm room, was now valued at over $50 billion. His personal fortune put him firmly among the world's elite. The latest issue of Tech Innovator magazine sat on his desk, his own face staring back at him beneath the headline. Alexander Reed, the billionaire with the Midas touch. Yet as the golden hour cast long shadows across the city, Alexander felt a familiar emptiness creeping in. What good was all this success when he had no one to share it with? His last 3 relationships had ended the same way, with women who seemed more enamored with his bank account than with him as a person. Mr. Reed, his executive assistant, Patricia, interrupted his thoughts. The board members are waiting in the conference room. Alexander nodded. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. After Patricia left, he picked up the magazine and tossed it into the recycling bin. He was tired of being Alexander Reed, billionaire bachelor, tired of wondering if people valued him or his money. That evening, as he drove home in his custom Tesla, a traffic jam forced him to take a detour through downtown. He stopped at a red light next to a company shuttle bus with the Horizon Technologies logo. The driver was chatting amicably with an employee boarding the bus. There was something about their genuine interaction that struck Alexander. No pretense, no agenda, just authentic human connection. That's when the idea hit him. Radical, perhaps even crazy, but somehow perfect. The next morning, he called Patricia into his office. I need to make some arrangements, he said, and this stays between us. 2 weeks later, Alex, with his designer stubble, simple clothes, and a backstory as a new employee in the company's transportation department, was ready to begin his undercover mission. Nobody looking at the unassuming driver would recognize him as the billionaire CEO whose portrait hung in the lobby. Time to find out who sees a man beyond the money, he murmured to himself, straightening his plain blue cap as he prepared to drive the company's shuttle for the very first time. Horizon Technologies occupied a sprawling campus in downtown Seattle, 6 gleaming buildings of steel and glass that house over 5,000 employees. The company was known for its innovative cloud computing solutions and workplace perks, from gourmet cafeterias to gaming lounges. But as Alexander was quickly discovering from the driver's seat, the company culture he'd tried to build looked very different from ground level. Hey, driver, you're late. A man in an expensive suit barked as Alexander pulled up to one of the pickup points for his first morning route. The executive didn't even look up from his phone as he climbed aboard. Unlike the smiling security guard who greeted Alex by name and asked about his first week on the job. Throughout that first morning, Alexander observed the invisible hierarchies that had formed within his company. Some employees barely acknowledged his existence, while others, mostly the maintenance staff, cafeteria workers, and junior developers, treated him with kindness and respect. By lunchtime, he had revised his initial plan. This wasn't just about finding a potential partner. It was about understanding his company from the inside out. His afternoon route included picking up employees from Building C, which housed the product development team. As he waited in the designated area, a young woman rushed toward the shuttle, arms full of folders, trying to balance a coffee cup precariously on top. Hold on, I've got you, Alexander called, jumping out to help her before the whole stack tumbled. Thank you so much, she said breathlessly, her warm brown eyes meeting his with genuine gratitude. I'm running late for a cross-campus meeting, and my team lead would kill me if I lost these prototypes. No problem, Alexander replied, helping her aboard. I'm Alex, by the way, new shuttle driver. Emma Collins, product manager for user experience, she said, extending her hand with a firm handshake. Nice to meet someone who actually stops to help around here. As they drove across campus, Emma organized her files and occasionally made small talk. Unlike others who either ignored him or spoke condescendingly, she addressed him with the same respect she would give any colleague. So how long have you been with Horizon? She asked. Just started last week, he replied truthfully, still figuring things out. Well, despite what some people might show you, it's not a bad place to work, Emma said. The vision is amazing, connecting people through technology that actually improves lives. Sometimes I just wish leadership could see what's happening on the ground floor. Alexander felt a twinge of guilt mixed with curiosity. What do you mean? Emma hesitated, then sighed. Just that sometimes big ideas get lost in bureaucracy. Anyway, this is my stop. Thanks for the rescue, Alex. As she hurried off toward Building E, Alexander watched her go, intrigued not just by her friendly demeanor, but by her candid comment about leadership, about him. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him without an agenda, without knowing who he really was. Over the next few days, Alexander found himself looking forward to Emma's regular afternoon shuttle rides. Unlike his carefully curated executive meetings, these brief conversations felt refreshingly real. 3 weeks into his undercover role, Alexander had established a routine. Emma frequently took his shuttle between buildings for meetings, often staying aboard longer than necessary to finish their conversations. You know what's funny, Alex? Emma said one rainy afternoon as they drove across campus. I probably talk to you more honestly than I do with most people I've worked with for years. Why is that? He asked, genuinely curious. Maybe because you actually listen. She laughed, not trying to climb the corporate ladder or impress anyone. Do you know how rare that is around here? Alexander felt another pang of guilt about his deception, but couldn't deny the truth in her words. So, what brought you to driving shuttles? Emma asked. You seem like someone who could be doing anything. Alexander had prepared for this question. Needed a change. Used to work in tech management, but got burned out by the politics. Wanted something simpler for a while. I get that, Emma nodded, looking out at the rain-streaked windows. Sometimes I think about walking away, too. From Horizon? Why? You always talk about your projects with so much passion. Emma was quiet for a moment. I love what I do, but lately it feels like we're moving away from what made this company special. Did you know Horizon Technologies was founded on the idea that technology should bring people together, not isolate them? Alexander Reed's original mission statement was about creating tools that enhance human connection. Alexander was stunned to hear his own words from 15 years ago quoted back to him with such conviction. I've been developing a project on the side, she continued. A platform that would help companies identify and nurture internal talent instead of always looking outside. People feel invisible in big corporations. My system would change that. Have you pitched it to management? Alexander asked, already knowing the answer. Emma laughed. 3 times. It always gets lost in the shuffle. My direct supervisor is supportive, but getting through to upper management? Impossible. I'd need a miracle to get Reed himself to look at it. As they arrived at her stop, Emma gathered her things. Sorry for the rant. I don't usually dump my work frustrations on near strangers. We're not strangers, Alexander said. We're friends who haven't known each other long. Her smile was worth every minute of a charade. I like that. See you tomorrow, Alex. That evening, as Alexander returned to his penthouse, he found himself researching Emma Collins's work history. Hired 4 years ago, consistently excellent performance reviews, but as she'd said, her innovative proposals hadn't made it past middle management. The company structure he'd built had effectively buried one of his most passionate employees. The next day, Emma boarded his shuttle looking downcast. Budget cuts, she explained when he asked what was wrong. My department is being restructured, which everyone knows means layoffs are coming. I'm sorry, Alexander said, genuinely concerned. Your project will probably never see the light of day now, she finished. But hey, that's corporate America, right? The view from the top is probably very different. Maybe, Alexander said carefully, but good ideas should rise to the top regardless. Emma smiled sadly. In an ideal world, sure. Want to know something funny? I actually admired Reed when I joined. His early interviews talked about valuing people over profits, but I haven't seen him on campus in months. The higher you climb, the more disconnected you become, I guess. Each word felt like a personal indictment. Alexander had indeed become increasingly isolated, surrounded by yes-men and sycophants. When had he last walked through the campus, talking to regular employees? As weeks passed, their friendship deepened. They discussed books, debated technology ethics, and shared personal stories, though Alexander was careful to keep his heavily edited. Emma spoke of her middle-class upbringing in Portland, her computer engineer father who had inspired her career path, and her dreams of creating technology that brought humanity back to the digital world. Alexander found himself captivated not just by her intelligence, but by her genuine compassion. She knew the names of every maintenance worker and security guard on campus. She brought coffee for her team members working late and volunteered teaching coding to underprivileged kids on weekends. One evening, after her late meeting, they sat in the park shuttle as rain hammered on the roof. "My dad used to say that you can tell a person's character by how they treat people who can do nothing for them," Emma said quietly. "I've seen executives walk past you like you're invisible, Alex. That tells me everything I need to know about them." Alexander couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so ashamed or so seen. 6 weeks into his undercover role, Alexander faced a critical juncture. As CEO, he was preparing for the quarterly leadership meeting where divisions would present their progress and challenges. Emma's department was indeed on the chopping block. The numbers weren't meeting projections, and his CFO had recommended a 30% reduction in staff. That same morning, as Alex the driver, he picked Emma up looking more stressed than he'd ever seen her. "Everything okay?" he asked as she collapsed into a seat. "They've moved up the restructuring announcement," she said, voice tight with controlled emotion. "And on top of that, my team lead is presenting our division's work to leadership tomorrow without any of my recent innovations included. He says they're too experimental for a time when we need to focus on core business." Alexander felt torn between his two worlds. Maybe there's another way to get your ideas noticed? Emma shook her head. "Unless I can magically get into that boardroom tomorrow, it's not happening. The worst part? I truly believe my platform could save jobs by showing how better utilize existing talent." She looked out the window. "Sorry for venting. It's not your problem." But it was his problem. That night, alone in his penthouse, Alexander made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, CEO Alexander Reed stunned his executive team by announcing a new initiative focusing on internal talent development and employee engagement using a framework that sounded remarkably similar to Emma's proposal. He instructed his CTO to find the origins of this innovative approach that had apparently been developing within their ranks. Meanwhile, Emma was confused when her team lead called an emergency meeting. "I don't understand," he said, bewildered. "Reed himself is asking about your project. How did it get on his radar?" "What?" "That's impossible," Emma replied, equally shocked. "Well, impossible or not, you're presenting to the executive team tomorrow. Congratulations, Collins. Your career at Horizon just got fast-tracked." That afternoon, Emma boarded Alex's shuttle in a daze. "You won't believe what happened," she said. "Somehow, Alexander Reed heard about my project. I'm presenting to the executive team tomorrow." Alexander forced a surprised expression. "That's amazing. How do you think he found out?" "I have no idea. I've never even met the man." She looked both excited and terrified. "Do you know what this means? If they implement even part of my system, it could change how the whole company operates." "You deserve it," Alexander said sincerely. "Your ideas are brilliant." Emma's smile faded slightly. "But now I have to present to the actual Billionaire CEO. What if he's nothing like I imagined? What if he's just another detached executive who doesn't really care?" The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Alexander. "Maybe he'll surprise you." "I hope so," Emma replied. "I've always thought that if I could just get 5 minutes with him, I could show him how we've drifted from his original vision." That night, Alexander barely slept, knowing tomorrow would change everything. Emma stood outside the executive conference room, smoothing her blazer nervously. Inside waited the leadership team and Alexander Reed himself, the man whose company philosophy had inspired her to join Horizon in the first place, but who now seemed as distant as a corporate myth. What she didn't know was that Alexander had arrived early and was seated at the far end of the table, reviewing her proposal with genuine interest. He deliberately dressed differently than his driver persona, clean-shaven, in a tailored suit, his usual CEO appearance. When Emma was ushered in, Alexander felt an unexpected flutter of anxiety. Would she recognize him immediately? Their eyes met briefly across the room, and he saw a flicker of confusion cross her face before she turned her attention to setting up her presentation. Ms. Collins, the CFO began, we understand you developed a system for internal talent development. The floor is yours. Emma took a deep breath and launched into her presentation. Alexander watched with pride as she eloquently explained her vision, a comprehensive platform that would identify underutilized skills within the company, create mentorship pathways, and foster innovation from within rather than constantly seeking outside talent. The core problem, Emma explained, gaining confidence as she spoke, is that companies like ours have become so large that we've lost sight of our greatest asset, our people. Employees feel invisible, their ideas buried under layers of management. This system would change that fundamental disconnect. As she spoke, Alexander noticed his executive team's growing interest. The same proposal that had been repeatedly ignored was now capturing their full attention, partly because it came with his implicit endorsement, a reality that only reinforced Emma's point about structural problems. When she finished, the room erupted in discussion. Alexander remained quiet, observing the dynamics. Finally, he spoke. Ms. Collins, your proposal aligns perfectly with Horizon's founding principles I fear we've drifted from. All eyes turned to him. I'd like to implement a pilot program immediately, with you leading it. Emma looked stunned. Thank you, Mr. Reed. This platform has been my passion project for years. Years? He questioned, though he knew the answer. How many times have you tried to bring this forward? The room grew uncomfortable as Emma hesitated. 3 formal proposals over the last 2 years, sir. Alexander nodded gravely. And yet it took direct intervention from the CEO for it to reach this room. That's exactly the problem your system addresses, isn't it? After the meeting, as executives filed out, Alexander approached Emma. Up close, the moment he'd been dreading was imminent. Excellent work, Ms. Collins. I'd like to discuss implementation details with you personally. Perhaps over coffee? Emma looked up at him, that same flicker of confusion returning. Thank you, Mr. Reed. That would be, wait. Her expression changed as recognition dawned. You're Alex? The shuttle driver? The blood drained from her face as pieces fell into place. That's how you knew about my project. You've been what? Spying on employees? Emma, I can explain. No wonder it suddenly got attention. She cut him off, her voice low but intense. Was this some kind of game to you? Pretending to be a working-class employee? Did you laugh about our conversations later? Before he could respond, she gathered her materials. Excuse me, Mr. Reed. I need to process this. She walked out, leaving Alexander facing the consequences of his deception. For 3 days, Emma avoided the company's shuttles and ignored Alexander's meeting requests. He respected her space, but grew increasingly concerned that his deception had destroyed not just a potential relationship, but had cost the company one of its most innovative minds. Finally, Patricia informed him that Emma had requested a formal meeting. Emma entered his office with a professional demeanor that was worse than anger. Mr. Reed, I've come to discuss my position within the company. Emma, please. I've been offered a position with Nexus Technologies, she continued as if he hadn't spoken. Given recent events, I believe it would be best if I wasn't laughing at you, Alexander interrupted desperately. It was never a game. Emma finally met his eyes, her hurt evident beneath her professional veneer. Then what was it? Because from where I'm standing, a billionaire CEO masquerading as a working-class employee feels incredibly deceptive. Alexander gestured to chairs by the window, away from the imposing desk. After a moment's hesitation, Emma sat. 6 weeks ago, I realized I'd become exactly what I never wanted to be, he began. Isolated in this tower, surrounded by people who only tell me what I want to hear. I started driving the shuttle because I wanted to see my company through unclouded eyes. And what? I was just collateral damage in your journey of self-discovery. No, Alexander said firmly. You were the revelation. You showed me everything that had gone wrong. How good ideas get buried, how disconnected leadership had become, how we drifted from our mission. Emma's expression remained skeptical. And our conversations, our friendship, were the most genuine interactions I've had in years, he admitted. Nobody has spoken to me with such honesty since before I became Alexander Reed, Billionaire CEO. You saw me as a person, not a position or a bank account, because you lied about who you were. I never lied about who I am, Alexander countered. Only what I do, the conversations we had, the things I share about my values. My thoughts, those were all real. Emma shook her head. You watched me struggle with my project, complain about management about you, and said nothing. And that was wrong, Alexander acknowledged. But if I had told you who I was, would you have spoken to me the same way? Would you have told the CEO that he'd lost touch with his company's mission? The question hung between them. That doesn't justify the deception, Emma finally said, but her tone had softened slightly. No, it doesn't, he agreed. But I'm hoping you'll let me make it right not just with you, but with the whole company. Emma studied him. How? Alexander took a deep breath. I want to implement your system, with you leading it. But more than that, I want to restructure our entire approach to innovation and communication. Break down the barriers between leadership and employees. And I'm supposed to trust you now? No, Alexander said. I need to earn that trust back, which is why I want to start with a company-wide town hall where I explain exactly what I did and what I learned. Complete transparency. Emma looked surprised. You publicly admit to going undercover in your own company? Yes, because the problem isn't just that I deceived you. It's that I created a company where I had to go undercover to hear the truth. For the first time since discovering his identity, Emma's expression showed something other than hurt or anger, a glimmer of the respect they'd once shared. That would be a start, she conceded. But actions matter more than words, especially from CEOs. Alexander nodded. I know. That's why I need your help not as an employee, but as someone who sees both the promise of what Horizon could be and how far we've strayed from it. Emma was quiet for a long moment. I'll postpone my decision about Nexus until after your town hall. What you do there, and after will determine whether I stay. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a chance one Alexander was determined not to waste. The auditorium was packed for the unprecedented company-wide meeting. Rumors had been swirling for days about a major announcement. Emma sat in the front row, her expression unreadable as Alexander took the stage. Thank you all for coming, he began. I've asked you here because I owe everyone in this room an apology and an explanation. A murmur ran through the crowd as Alexander recounted his weeks as a shuttle driver. When he described how the experience had revealed the disconnect between his vision and the company's reality, the room grew silent. To those of you who were kind to Alex the driver, who treated him with respect and humanity, thank you. To those who didn't, I hope we can all learn from this experience. The person who deserves the most recognition, and my deepest apology is Emma Collins. Emma straightened in her seat as all eyes turned to her. Ms. Collins not only treated everyone she encountered with dignity, but has been trying to solve these exact problems through her work for years. Work that was repeatedly overlooked until I experienced the issues firsthand. Alexander outlined the changes that would begin immediately implementing Emma's talent platform, restructuring feedback channels, and regular no-hierarchy forums where employees could speak directly with leadership. Horizon Technologies was founded on the belief that technology should enhance human connection, he concluded. We lost sight of that internally, but today marks a new beginning. As the weeks passed, Alexander worked tirelessly to ensure his promises weren't empty words. The pilot implementation of Emma's platform quickly proved its value, identifying overlooked talent throughout the company and creating pathways for ideas to flow upward. Emma remained professional but distant, leading her team with the same passion, but avoiding one-on-one interactions with Alexander. He respected her boundaries while hoping that his consistent actions would eventually rebuild what his deception had broken. 3 months after the town hall, Alexander found Emma working late in the innovation lab. The quarterly numbers came in, he said, placing a report on her desk. Employee satisfaction up 34%. Internal promotions increased by 28%, and the retention rate in previously high-turnover departments has improved by 41%. Emma allowed herself a small smile. The system works. Because of you, Alexander acknowledged. The board is impressed. They've approved the full-scale implementation, and want to explore marketing it as a product for other companies. That's wonderful, Emma said, finally meeting his eyes. I didn't think corporate culture could change this quickly. People respond when they feel genuinely valued, Alexander replied. Something you tried to tell me on those shuttle rides. A moment of shared understanding passed between them. I miss our conversations, Alexander admitted. I miss my friend who saw past titles and bank accounts. Emma sighed. I miss my friend who listened without judgment. But that person was built on a deception. Parts were, Alexander conceded, but not the important parts. Not the values or the thoughts or the person who found himself looking forward to your conversations every day. Emma studied him. I've been thinking about something my father used to say, that true character is revealed through actions over time, not words in a moment. And what did my actions tell you? Alexander asked quietly. That you meant what you said. That you're trying to be the leader you always wanted to be. She hesitated. That maybe the person I got to know wasn't entirely fictional. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. 6 months after the town hall, Horizon Technologies had undergone a remarkable transformation. The rigid hierarchies had softened. Innovation flourished as ideas found their way to decision-makers. Alexander himself had relocated his office from the isolated top floor to a glass-walled space in the center of the main building. Emma's platform had expanded beyond Horizon, with several major companies adopting the system. She had been promoted to Chief Innovation Officer, working directly with Alexander but maintaining her professional boundaries, until one rainy afternoon when she found him in the parking lot, struggling with an umbrella. Need some help there, Mr. CEO? She called, echoing their first meeting. Alexander looked up, rain streaming down his face, and laughed. I appear to have downgraded my umbrella technology along with my office. Emma stepped under the partial shelter of his broken umbrella. I heard you turned down the Forbes cover story. Alexander shrugged. Some things are more important than publicity. Like what? Like rebuilding trust. Showing through actions, not words. He met her eyes. Like earning a second chance with someone whose opinion matters more than any magazine cover. Emma was quiet for a moment, rain falling around them. You know, I've been thinking about those shuttle rides. About how easy it was to talk to you. It still could be, Alexander said softly. Maybe, Emma replied. But this time, no secrets. No personas. Just two people getting to know each other for who they really are. Alexander smiled. I like that. As they walked toward the building together, sharing the broken umbrella, neither knew exactly where this new beginning would lead. But one thing was certain: whatever connection formed between them now will be built on something far more valuable than wealth or status. Honesty, mutual respect, and the simple recognition of seeing another person for who they truly are. 1 year after Alexander's undercover journey, Horizon Technologies had become a case study in corporate transformation. The company that had once buried Emma's innovative ideas now had the highest employee satisfaction ratings in the industry. Alexander's Reconnection initiative had been featured in business schools across the country. As for Emma and Alexander, their relationship had evolved slowly, rebuilt on a foundation of genuine respect and trust. Their shared passion for humanizing technology had created a partnership that transcended both professional boundaries and Alexander's initial deception. You know, Emma said one evening as they walked the campus grounds, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you'd never decided to become a shuttle driver. Alexander considered this. My ideas would have stayed in the boardroom. Your innovations would have remained buried in middle management. And we would have both continued believing that connection was something that happened on a screen rather than between people. Emma smiled. A billionaire CEO and a product manager who met because he pretended to be a driver. Not exactly a conventional love story. But maybe a necessary one, Alexander replied. I needed to lose the trappings of wealth to find something of actual value. As they watched the sunset paint the Horizon campus in gold, both reflected on the journey that had brought them together. Alexander had disguised himself as a poor driver to find a wife, but what he discovered was something far more precious. The truth about his company, himself, and the kind of connection that no amount of money could buy. In seeking to be seen for who he was rather than what he owned, he had learned to truly see others, especially the brilliant, compassionate woman beside him who had first treated a shuttle driver with the same respect she would give a CEO. Some treasures, they had both discovered, remain invisible until you look beyond the surface. Soft music fades, and that's our story for today. Everyone, if you enjoyed this tale about looking beyond appearances and finding authentic connection, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories every week. What about you? Have you ever discovered something valuable when you weren't looking for it? Or found connection in unexpected places? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation together.